Welcome to Carey Open, a podcast where we open a window into the world of Carey Baptist College. This episode is a recording from our chapel gathering called Karakia.
It was a very creative reading of the text. Worked for me. But I don't have peace, exactly, because anything around fishing brings back a memory to when I was about like 7 or 8. And I had a father that loved, it was a stress release for him to go fishing. And so we went away for Christmas somewhere like, we were living in Christchurch at the time, and I think we went somewhere around Nelson or something. The whole memory's a blur for intentional reasons. So we go out fishing. My dad had bought the whole gear, the rod, the reel, the line, the sinkers, the bait, and the entire thing. And I never found fishing to be an excitement on any level. But we go out and having a tedious time. My father would often get the hook stuck on a rock or something like that. And very seldom was I ever aware of the fact that he actually caught a fish. So it was usually an unproductive exercise. So then he catches this fish and he's reeling the fish in and he's very excited and animated in his excitement, and the fish gets stuck on a rock. And he gives me the joy of holding the rod so that he could then actually get in the water, swim out, get the fish, so that he was able to actually catch the fish with his great joy. And potentially, so he goes out to do that, swims out to wherever the heck that was, and I'm just looking at the rod and how tall the rod is, and then the line, and the fact that the line comes all the way down through those kind of circle things, you know, on the rod, all the way down to a very fine and quite large looking, what's that thing called? With reel. The reel. And I'm looking at the reel and I see this little mechanism on the reel. And because I was given to, investigation, I clicked this button on the reel, or this little thing, and then all of a sudden the entire thing comes out like this, and it, like the entire, what's that stuff called? The gut stuff, the fishing line comes and then gets completely tangled up all over the place to the point of non-redemption. And my father loses the fish and comes back, and from that day I've had PTSD when it comes to fishing. And so when I read stories like this about fishing, it doesn't give me warm fuzzies. I have often been interested in the life of Peter. We get to kind of see the whole story. I saw that he was like an impulsive character, weird-ish, like a little bit impetuous. But he was quick to arrive at a belief. Back in chapter 6, he talks about his belief that Jesus was the Holy One of God. He's the one that has the issue at the foot washing moment. And he's also the one, see, I don't actually get this, but he's the one in a very significant moment for all of us where he decides to chop the man's ear off. And you have to go, who is this? Because Jesus has to have a little interruption, by the way, just let me put the ear back on. And this is kind of, like, we knew who he became. But I'm looking at the life of Peter and it gives me hope. He gives me hope. I also take note of this, and this is not a very scholarly thing to do, but I'm looking at the fact that right in the very first chapter of this book is the call to this man and others, right in the final chapter, as we read, there's a new call. Same person, different circumstances, with a different relationship, and much had gone on in between chapter 1 and chapter 21. But to me, I don't know if to anyone else, there's something about that. And it kind of reflects some of our lives from when we were first called by Jesus and the moment when maybe we had to be recalled. Anyway, often I found myself considering different aspects of this particular story. How it must have been for those post-Jesus' death and resurrection, but what will we now do? And Peter decides, let's just go fishing, because we know how to do that. Don't take me with you, but let's go fishing. Just something that was a little bit familiar. Things had changed kind of suddenly. The return to that call. That's intrigued me. That fruitless exercise of fishing for them, kind of like a failure. And then the fish miracle that they experienced. Not for the first time, it had happened before, but it was a fish miracle. The Bible scholar Craig S. Keener comments this. It says, fish miracles appear elsewhere in the ancient sources as kind of should be expected in a world where fishes were common and people looked to deities for help with nature. I never thought about this before. And he says it's in the modern industrial and post-industrial secular mind, the mindset that is unusual from the standpoint of human history. People saw miracles like the fish miracle. And then there was Te Pouarataki, the breakfast. N.T. Wright talks about the awkward interview. In that moment, I'm going, probably was quite awkward, wasn't it? It's like, hey. Not because of the way Jesus handled it, but because when we have had a failure, sometimes we just don't know how to be. And how that moment might unfold when we have to face truth. And then there's this link that's made, actually that Wright makes, between the coals of the fire that the breakfast was being cooked on and the coals of that place where he collapsed and did the thing he said he wouldn't do. I wonder what it was like, our senses. I wonder if being by that fire reminded him of maybe the smell of that fire took him back. Those times when a certain sense comes and it takes us back, but like a song, takes us back to a moment or a sound. I wonder what happened for Peter at that time. Another linking point was the fact that there was the bread that Jesus had brought, and then there was the miracle of the fish. But some random way, Jesus also had fish on the fire in that point, and the kind of link between another miracle that happened when the loaves and the fish multiplied and the people were fed. One of my most significant mentors in ministry is also a hospitality queen. A minister and a teacher who fully engaged in the ministry of hospitality. And she used to see it like some people just need to go to hospital and have a moment. That's literally how she saw it. And she would make the most beautiful, she does still to this day, make the most beautiful meals and feed the people. If they were going to stay the night, she didn't just have the lovely bed, she'd have little treats on the side of the bed and a little welcome card, all sorts of stuff that she would go out of the way. And one of her whakatauki, or her familiar sayings, was, love is in the detail. And when I read the story and then realise there's just little symbols around, that for Jesus, love was in the detail. And sometimes because of our lack of knowledge, we don't necessarily have insight into the detail, but the love of Jesus attends to the detail. But kind of not the detail that I would have attended to in that moment. Because if I wanted to correct someone, or I was instrumental in helping them learn their lesson, well, I don't know about you, but I would have gone, remember when you said? And that's not the way that it unfolded. See, this story has been mentoring me, because I'd like to make people breakfast. So it unfolds in the interview following the breakfast. Do you love me? Actually, N.T. Wright does break down, as does a few others, breaks down the fact that there's these, as opposed to Dr. Robinson, breaks down the fact that there's these kind of comments around the type of love that's being spoken of. And at least I have this wonder. I wonder if really what Jesus was doing in that, this is just a wonder, if what Jesus was going, I just know that you can't love me in an unboundaried way from infinity to infinity. But maybe you can love me the way that you can love me, and I'm going to meet you where you're at, just like I had to meet Thomas earlier in the story where he was at. 3 times he asks these questions, and there's this unfolding thing happening in the story that might have happened for you and me at some point in our life. Because the one who in an earlier chapter said, I'm the good shepherd, is now simply saying to Peter, you love me? You're going to turn into a good shepherd. You're not just going to be a sheep. This is a transformative moment, because it wasn't just a transformative moment and a new commissioning. It was forgiveness, it was reinstatement, it was reconciliation. And not once did he say to Peter, who's the strange being? But anyway, to Peter, not once did he say to him, I know. He didn't call him out for the act. But then he says to him, Nō reira tēnā koe, tēnā koe, tēnā koe. Andreas Kustenberg comments, Jesus' threefold repetition of those questions reflect Near Eastern custom of reiterating a matter 3 times before witnesses in order to convey a solemn obligation, especially with regard to contracts, conferring rights or legal dispositions. By analogy, Jesus' threefold question lends solemnity to the occasion of his commissioning Peter to his special shepherding task. Nō reira, tēnā koe, tēnā koe, tēnā koe. Our Māori world understands the 3 times welcome, and in other ways that we use the 3 times, just so you know, you're welcome. And maybe that was something that was unfolding in that moment to absolutely solidify the special and sacred nature of what was happening as forgiveness was being poured out. And he didn't even say the words, "I forgive you." He commissioned him. And the shepherd, the good shepherd, introduced a new shepherd. In the moment, we know the end of that story. But I want to be that person in ministry. Not the one that has to point out the flaw and the detail and the failure to the nth degree, because you need to learn not to repeat that behaviour. But those divine moments, like Jesus exampled, here's a way you might do something. And the first thing is serve. Make someone some breakfast, and potentially a really low and difficult moment of their lives. Attend to the detail. Love well. Love's in the detail. And be prepared to recognise what the prophetic component is in there, which is, here's a sheep that in this moment's about to become, and be called to be a shepherd to tend and care for. And the concluding scriptures, the concluding part of this text is, and by the way, the end result for you is this: spread out your arms. That entire scenario, you're going to give up your life. And then he says, follow me. Follow me. And this morning, mentored for ministry. Maybe there's something in here that will enable us to find a reach to the broken who are called, to the failure who have a destiny. And what a privilege to be able to find whatever the unique skill or moment is that will see someone's life transformed because of another's ministry of love. Hear the word of the Lord. Feed, care for.